Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. Live from Austin, Texas, broadcasting worldwide, it's Alex Jones.
Okay, Dr. Doug Rokke, the foremost depleted uranium weapons expert out there, joins us. He hadn't been on in a while. I know he's had some health issues, from the DU. Again, a lot of his team has died from it. And the point is, 20 years ago, they wouldn't let the troops, 22 years ago or so, use this. Now there's just no pretense of control, and it's a death sentence. And it also is causing deformities. He's here to give us the numbers and break it down. And then I want to ask him, in light of Fukushima, the FDA, of course, raised different levels of radioactive isotopes from 25 times to, in one isotope, 100,000 times what they previously said was safe, because as the ongoing meltdown hit the U.S., they just said, well, we say it's okay now. Go ahead and drink the milk, eat the food. So there's this new attitude that just don't worry about it. And it's unprecedented. Dr. Doug Rokke, great to have you here with us, sir.
What an honor to follow Jesse Ventura. I mean, he's my hero. I mean, a Navy SEAL, and I'm a Minnesota boy, too, from at heart. So, and then the other crazy thing, one of his team members from his SEAL days was actually supposed to be here this morning at my house, but because of everything we're doing, we couldn't make it work. God, that would have been incredible, huh?
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, Jesse, we were talking off air about his book and the fact that his book breaks down the DU as well.
His book is incredible. It's one of the books ever written, that anybody and everybody ought to read that cover to cover more than once.
Talking about 63 documents the government doesn't want you to read.
Yeah, a whole bunch of those, isn't it?
Well, I know when he gets back from Mexico, Doc, he'll definitely want to hook up with you, because I know he admires your work as well. That's why he's written about it. Expanding on this, I've just got to ask you, what do you think of Ron Paul?
Pardon me?
What do you think of Ron Paul?
Ron Paul?
Yes, sir.
Well, yeah, and he's one of the very few guys that's tried to do anything to help anybody and actually gather information. So, I mean, he's a real doctor. He's a medical doctor that doesn't cut, he tells the truth and puts it all out there. I mean, I'm sitting there looking at what's going on all around. I'm going, we've worked with so many over the years. Who do we have that'll tell the truth and deal what the reality is and help everybody? There ain't many out there.
Doc, let's say you were on national TV right now, because our audience is a lot bigger than most national news shows, and you're talking to 3 million people, which you are, a lot of them new listeners. What do they need to know about DU? Why is it important? What's the story of it? What happened to you? In 5 minutes, boil it down, then we'll get into more detail.
Depleted uranium is the United States military-owned dirty bomb. It is the best weapon ever developed by the U.S. military and the German military to destroy and kill everything. It's absolutely the best there is. And as a consequence, we've used it in military operations. We're handing it out to all of our so-called friends all over the world to use as they see fit. A lot of our other nations have decided they can't use it because of the known adverse health and environmental effects that have always been known. And yet, just like Agent Orange and everything else, we are so arrogant and so intent on killing and destroying that we totally disregard the health and environmental effects on our own people, our own military personnel, our own sons and daughters, and we completely, totally disregard the health and environmental effects on all of God's sons and daughters around the world and all of his animals, because we just want to kill and destroy. And even though all the medical directives have been out there from day one, and during Desert Storm, I issued the original medical directive, and that was followed up by the Theater Medical Command Directive from 3rd U.S. Army Medical Command. And then now they've got a brand new medical order mandating medical care for DU that was just issued here on June 10th of this year. And yet is totally ignored, totally ignored. Just like the health and environmental effects of Agent Orange are totally ignored, because we're the bad guys. We messed it up. We are using it. We're going to continue to use it with a total disregard for all the health and environmental effects. And what we need now is, we got 1 million casualties, 1 million U.S. sons and daughter casualties out of the nonsense in the Persian Gulf and Afghanistan. And they can't get prompt and optimal medical care. And it's coming back to haunt all our communities, and they're not employable. The families are in disintegration. And there's nobody out there offering help. I mean, we're yelling at the top of our heads, and God bless Jesse, man. He's written and yelling at the top of his lungs. But there ain't many of us trying to do what's right.
Well, Dr. Rokke, what's crazy here, and I know you've got the numbers. I want you to break it down as a top expert. As you said, 25 years ago, this was for if the Russians poured across 10-to-1 superiority into Germany. It was a last-ditch weapon to use once nuclear war was already happening. It was a force multiplier, a secret weapon. Then the Gulf War comes along, and they go, we're just going to go ahead and use it on Saddam. And then they have the troops go into the areas that have been hit with it. But still, they did some fake, decontamination, which they sent you in for to, quote, study, which was, devastating for your health. And now it's on record. They say, don't worry about it. You have no safety. And now they're using it not just at big proving grounds, as you know, sir. They're using them at regular shooting ranges at bases. They're using them near population centers. So explain to people why DU is so deadly.
Well, what happens is DU is, again, it's a primary byproduct of the radioactive enrichment process for the U.S. Department of Energy. If we're going to make nuclear fuel for our reactors, okay, generate electricity, or we need to make nuclear weapons, then you have to understand, we're making new ones all the time, okay? Better and better nuclear weapons all the time, and we're developing better and better DU munitions every day of the week. And what happens, 99% of everything that goes into this process is pure waste. If you had any other industrial process where 99% of the stuff that goes into it is pure waste, you would never consider it. And so we have uranium hexafluoride, and the Department of Energy and the military came up with ways to get rid of it. Number one is the DU munitions. Absolutely incredible. Number two, we use it in ballast and commercial aircraft and everything else under the thing. In other words, where you need, forklift trucks needed heavy. But the other thing, too, that has hit the scene here in the last couple of weeks heavily is they put it in the DU cream, DU egg. In other words, they're mixing the uranium hexafluoride, the DU metal, in the concrete to reinforce concrete structures and everything else. And the health effects that we're seeing right now, I mean, are devastating on the road crews and everybody else, much less the military. So we got a total nightmare. You can't take radioactive materials, put it into the environment where everybody can breathe it in, absorb it through their skin, get it in through cuts, or get it in through digestion, and not expect the health problems to occur. And everything we have predicted, everything we've been predicted, and everything that was stated would occur in the Department of Defense's own documents, going back that I can find 70 years, has come true. And now Fukushima, the catastrophe in Japan, well, the levels to clean up all that stuff, again, how you clean that up, clean that mess up, it is exactly that Army regulation you already cited that my team wrote in the TB that gives you the guidelines. But you can't clean it up. And that's what I found at the Nevada test site when I was director and blowing everything up. You can't clean it up. And there is no medical care. So all you do is wait and get sick and suffer, and you die, like Jim Runge, Andres Carnegie Bob.
Well, sir, I mean, I think the best way for you to break this down for people is what's personally happened to you and your team. I know we were unable to get you on a few months ago. You were at the VA, I guess they're in Virginia. I mean, I know you don't like to talk about yourself. You're an old warrior going back to Vietnam, but describe to people what you and folks that have worked around DU have gone through.
Well, what we've gone into, and I mean, I just go back and it's so easy to cite the exact medical problems, because the Department of Veteran Affairs, in their criteria that they have sent out telling their physicians, okay, what are the health effects of depleted uranium, okay? And I want to quote this verbatim so I don't make any errors, okay? So I'm pulling it all up. I'd want to, miss it on this thing. In the Department of Veteran Affairs, okay, the United States, and this is a direct quote, okay? United States Department of Veteran Affairs, Division 11, this is, quote, some things you need to know about veterans, a clinician's guide to veteran-specific issues. Okay, so this is the VA's publication to the physicians providing care, telling them what the medical problems are from DU. Now, these are exactly what I have, and, when you called that day, I'm at the main VA at the War Injury Clinic in Washington, D.C. They were freaking out when you guys called that day because because they knew what I was there for and all the problems were there, and the fact that you had found me and what needed to talk about it, they freaked out. Anyhow, here's the exact quote. Physical symptoms which may occur as a result of exposure to depleted uranium are sleep problems, totally confirmed on all of us, mood swings. I mean, irritability is incredible when that weather changes. Symptoms in the upper and lower respiratory system. Well, my doctors are trying to stabilize my respiratory through all kinds of medications and everything else and control. Neuropsychological symptoms, including memory loss. That's horrific. Chronic fatigue, immune system dysfunction. Skin rashes. Yeah, you don't want to look at my skin rash when it breaks out. Unusual hair loss. Aching joints, headaches, abdominal pain, sensitivity to light, blurred vision. Now, menstrual disorders. I haven't got that, but females horrible and incredible problems where they have to have early hysterectomy. Gastrointestinal symptoms where you go between diarrhea and constipation. You never know. Nervous system disorders such as numbness in a limb. It's happening to me right now. Multiple chemical sensitivity and all of the birth defects. End quote. That is what the VA directors have told their physicians are the health problems associated with that. When you go to the internal memorandum for the Department of Defense, and this is put together by Colonel J. Edgar Wakayama. This was the beginning of Desert Gulf War, Operation Iraqi Freedom, Enduring Freedom. What he stated very clearly, told everybody, all senior leaderships, on the medical problems associated with DU. Quote, the alpha particle taken inside the body as large doses has producing cell damage and cancer. Lung cancer is well documented.
Well, yeah, because I've had people, they call me and they go, hey, they don't wear radiation badges, and if they did, this type doesn't affect that. This isn't like the hot radiation, to use layman terms. It sits in your body at point-blank range. Not only is it radioactive, destroying the cell DNA, but it's toxic. Correct, doctor?
Absolutely, because once it gets into the body, it's right next to the cell, destroying everything and tearing up everything. So it's a big difference. When you're talking, there's different radioactivity. Again, we have to look at, do we have internalized, do we have particulars, or do we have like a light bulb where you have the stuff? You start getting the gamma rays, nuclear bombs, and everything else, like the reactor out there. That's the hot stuff where you can't get near it. This stuff is inside the body. So the radioactivity, which you can't measure with Geiger counters, and all the other chemical toxicity, once it gets into the body, tears it apart. Quote, the beta particles hazardous skin and the lens of the eye. I'm tired of eye surgeries, and I'm tired of the doctors at the VA canceling the eye surgeries because they don't know the outcomes for me and then everybody else. Okay, we continue on. Direct quotes. Okay? I mean, it just goes on and on.
Now, I know you're going from their own documents, but specifically, we can pull up mainstream articles where they admit 12, 14, 16 times the birth defects in areas like Fallujah. I mean, even a decade ago, Life magazine, admitted massive birth defect increases, and now it's like a curse on our troops, and everybody claims they want to support the troops, but as soon as they have deformed children, or as soon as they get ill, it's like, you're garbage, get away from us.
Well, look at the famed 82nd Airborne out of Fort Bragg, North Carolina. The children are being born, they're not viable. The birth defects are incredibly high. Spontaneous abortions before the child is born all over in our military are staggering, especially out of Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And
the suicides are the greatest record level ever. What was it, 7 times the previous record? The military knows, and so now we get the Homeland Security documents, and the whole federal government's preparing for war with veterans because they're getting ready to take the pensions. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly right. So, we're looking at the whole thing. The DU has incredible neurotoxicity effects, just like all the pesticides and the burn pit stuff and all of the immunizations. So what happens is the PTSD that everybody's experienced is a function of 3 things. Number 1, incredible neurotoxicities. Number 2, fear beyond comprehension. You go from complete tranquility to sheer terror in a nanosecond. And Jesse Ventura is probably one of the world's leading experts on that because of what he did for real. And then you have the other thing, too, is the realization all of this stuff is lies. Recently, the chief of chaplains at Danville VA sent me an article that had showed up after we were talking. It showed up on his desk where they're finally acknowledging the ethical and moral dilemmas are creating incredible PTSD problems. Finally, when they're going to admit this and acknowledge this, and all of us that have been this have known this from antiquity, but nobody wants to admit it. So when we look at the incredible toxic effects of everything we've done, and DU is the leading list of our munitions, because it's the United States dirty bomb, radioactive dirty bomb that we spread all over the world and blow everything up.
And it's like a gun that you kill your enemy, but then it delays the killing of you. It's like a gun that you pull the trigger and it shoots you too.
Well, we know that happens because when we did all the research, the guys that are in the tanks that are firing all this stuff came back onto them. And to this day, you have to understand, to this day, I still can't get medical care for Desert Storm-friendly fire guys. And what happened, and this absolutely happened, this would be an incredible interview to happen. One of my guys that today became a critical care nurse, okay? He was DU-friendly fire in Desert Storm. They took him up to Washington to the main hospital up there, for medical care, because I finally got him to accept him and take him in for care. He had DU shrapnel in him. They put him into MRI, moved the DU shrapnel, and they put him into paraplegic condition.
Really?
And it was, it was just kind of like, how much worse does it get? And then when
so they moved it in his spine and paralyzed him.
Correct. And then so they don't provide the care. Now with the brand new medical directive, June of this year, medical directive that's been put out to provide medical care for DU. What they don't tell everybody is the original medical directive that we wrote. You guys got copies of all this, and it's in Beyond Treason, Gary Knoll. It's all over the place. Congress has it. The military has it. You have to do the testing within 72 hours of the initial exposure, and after 30 days post-exposure. In other words, if you're exposed on November 1st, on December 1st of the following month, or November 30th, what would be in the body that you could ever found is less than 1/1000th of what actually hit the body. And so, therefore, the testing that they have will never find it. So you're seeing all the physiological effects, the psychological effects, and there is no medical evidence that the military will accept or the Department of Veteran Affairs will accept.
And now they're proliferating its use. I've seen the numbers. It's just exponentially more they're using.
Absolutely, because it's effective at killing and destroying. And what scares the bejesus out of me, okay, we're so close to war right now. Just think about this. All we have to do is have the Iranians say, that's it, and they sink one ship in the Strait of Hormuz, and we're going to nuclear war. And we're going to have DU flying all over the place because all the ships and everything else and the aircraft, that's how they shoot.
But that's okay. They'll just tell the troops as they have deformed and dead babies, and as the troops die, that it's all right. They'll just, here in the U.S., they just said radiation's good for you now. They waved a magic wand. Stay there, doctor. We'll be right back. Okay, Dr. Doug Rocke's with us 20 minutes into the next hour. Then I'm going to get back into Ron Paul news and a special report on BPA that is in tens of thousands of products and is put there, we have the documents, to reduce fertility. It's all part of a eugenics operation. See, the people running our society are mad scientists, and they're playing God, and they see humans as garbage, so why not kill us? They're beyond evil. Here's a few articles at Infowars.com right now. New York Times attacks Ron Paul for living in the real world. They also attack us. It's a key article breaking it down. They still say you're crazy if you talk about world government, even as it's announced on the news. CNN, poll fundamentally flawed. Romney is not leading Ron Paul in Iowa. Get that article out to everybody, especially Iowa and New Hampshire voters. Saber rattling in Persian Gulf escalates. Iran rejects U.S. warning on closing down Strait of Hormuz. Yesterday, didn't get any news attention here, but it was in the foreign press. The U.S. government, I guess run by the bankers, sent an aircraft carrier through the Iranian drill. A huge provocation trying to get them to do something. So it is all just wild, and it's all up at Infowars.com. And more, TSA confiscates cupcakes and candy, allows man to walk through checkpoint with sword. This is a short segment, Dr. Rokke. I want to come back and get more to DU in the next hour, but let me just talk about the world in general. As a veteran, as a patriot, they're openly announcing with the NDAA they want troops on the streets, secret arrest of Americans. That's mainline news. Openly want internet censorship. The White House regulations are calling for arresting people that criticize government. The neocons are doing it. America is really going authoritarian. MF Global head, steals $1 billion+ bucks, gets caught lying, doesn't get in trouble. The corruption has reached insane levels. And so why shouldn't the bankers care? They'll get money off contracts, let the troops use DU, kills their enemies, kills the troops. It's like that piece in Braveheart, based on a composite of true stories, where the king is attacking Braveheart and the Scots, and he says, okay, have the archers fire into the battle. And they say, but sire, we'll kill our own troops. And he says, but we'll kill some of theirs as well. And it's like Henry Kissinger quoted as calling troops dumb animals, cannon fodder. And it shows, this shows the mindset, Doctor, doesn't it? That they know DU's deadly. Our military wouldn't allow it to be used. As you mentioned, they had it in the 50s. They had reports in the late 40s about it. They never let it be used until 1991, because something changed even in the ruling elite. Your comments?
It's total insanity. I mean, we totally ignore the rules of war. We totally ignore the health and environmental effects of war for economic gain. And everything today has become economic gain. When you look at the members of Congress use insider trader information to make billions of dollars that anybody else did would put them in jail, you know it's broken. When you have all the Beltway bandits, and you have to understand, man, I put myself in complete danger every time I talk because I reveal information they don't want out. When you look at this stuff, we've been putting together all of these plans on mount operations where we insert military units to take over civilian governments for years. All that operations, that plan is totally in place. The presidential decision directives that put this in place are up and via congressional review. In other words, Congress has no ability to review a presidential decision directive, just like the Supreme Court doesn't. So you issue these directives, and everything else goes on. I just finished a book on Abraham Lincoln and what he had done, suspension of habeas corpus and everything else, and all the civil rights violations they did during, the American Civil War. And at the end of the book, well, we're doing it worse today, but it's up for us to make a decision what we have. We either live by the rule of the law or we don't. We either comply with the rule of law and do what's right under God or we don't. We can't have it both ways, and we can't continue to kill, destroy, and take over for economic gain while people suffer.
Beautifully said. Back in 60 seconds. I want you to continue right there, because look at what getting rid of the Bill of Rights and Constitution has done. It's allowed the devils to come in and run everything. We'll be right back. Look, as Ron Paul said 2 weeks ago on this show, and it's in the New York Times, it's everywhere, NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act, establishes martial law in this country. And now you're hearing, oh, TSA is going to be on your streets. The Army is. None of this has to do with some, quote, Al-Qaeda threat, which is as phony as a $3 bill anyways. It's all aimed at us. It's always been aimed at us by the crooks that took over the country, Ponzi scheme operators, and have gotten us to sign on as their slaves. Now, Dr. Doug Rokke, you were getting into the decision we have to make, and all the police and military you've trained over the years, and you said, boy, I'm putting my life on the line saying this. Obviously, you know a lot of classified stuff, but so much of this is now out in the open. When you talk to police and military, from what I've seen, they're really starting to wake up. They're like, wow, I always heard this, but now it's true. Are you seeing an awakening happening? I mean, how can they abuse their own enforcers like this and think they're going to get away with it and have some new crop of kids to deal with the old guys? It's not going to work.
Well, it's not, because people are waking up. I mean, go to the Army Times website right now. The military has announced they're going to monitor all communications with individuals in the military. So your emails, your letters, they're just going to automatically monitor it. Now, their reason is, well, we don't want classified information to get out. Let me tell you, I never have, I never will, and I'm not going to discuss classified information outside of my combat operations center. I don't have to. I won't do it. It's wrong. But what they're doing right now is they don't want any discussion or debate about what we're doing or how we're doing it that affect men, women, and children when there's no viable threat. If we have a viable threat, baby, I'm going to be the first one, because once in the military, always been in the military, and Jesus Christ, I've only 18 years out of my over 60 years of my life that I haven't been in the military. You're always going to do it. So the whole thing comes on down to what is right and what is wrong, and what shall we do under a nation of God, according to our Constitution, according to our Bill of Rights, according to what we did establish many, many years ago, but we have forgotten what is right because of economic gain. I mean, that's what it's about. So when somebody says, well, we got to attack this nation, just like Libya or Yemen or you know, all the other ones are Iraq, Afghanistan. Do they pose any threat to us? No, they never have, never will.
Well, what about how they're publicly using al-Qaeda to overthrow the countries?
Well, al-Qaeda has been, you know, kind of like, it was one of ours originally, you know, and have to understand how all that came about. As a consequence of Desert Storm and what we had done in disrupting and trying to take over all their nations and control everything, al-Qaeda was a response, and bin Laden was a response to what we had done in their nations to disrupt their way of life, to take over everything. So it's, again, we triggered this. Now, they're pissed off, and they have no other way to counter. But does al-Qaeda or anybody have, other than a minor skirmish here or something, have any way to suspend our Bill of Rights or suspend our presidency, overthrow our White House? Absolutely not. Not now. Never could. Never will. And as long as we have our Second Amendment rights and we have our freedom of speech and everything else where we speak up and do what's right, according to law and according to the Constitution, nobody can ever suspend our government and our rights. But right now, from within, just like was said years and years ago in that famous speech, we ain't going to do it from outside. We're going to do it from inside. And that's what's happening. This scares the bejesus out of me.
Well, that's how every country or empire falls, is traitors within. It was Cicero. We can pull up his quote after the break if you guys can find the Cicero quote. You can pull it up under Cicero. The traitor is the plague. That'll pull it up. He said, the enemy that comes with their flag openly is not the threat. It's the traitor within who talks like us, dresses like us. They are the plague.
It's dollars, 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 dollars. That's what's driving the world today. And the thing that's horrific, I mean, every day I go out and I see all these guys, support the troops, there's a flag wave. And you got the American Legion down here at Marketplace Mall in Champaign collecting money. I went up to him and said, can you help us get to our appointments at the hospital 30 miles away? No. Can you help us get medical care? Yeah,
no, it's all just a beer drinking club. Stay there. I'm sorry about the break. Long segment coming up. Let's start back there, what they've done to people to expose the DU, and other people thinking about joining the military, what you're going to face. The pin cushioning, the testing of the vaccines, the DU, all of it. This empire doesn't care about you. But now things are not compartmentalized. Dr. Doug Rokke, during the break, was getting into the fact that this empire, this republic, is not going to fall from without, but from within. Let's continue with how they treat people from DU poisoning, and from your research, how much it's proliferating in its use, Dr. Rokke, because people claim all day, you were mentioning as we went to break, the troops, everybody's like, oh, we love the troops, and oh, there was a casket of a guy killed by a Air Force MP killed by a improvised explosive device in Iraq, and his buddy, another MP captain, was on the plane, and we were told to wait while he got off, and then everybody stood up in the plane, and old ladies were saluting as the Boston police picked up the casket, and we all waited for 20 minutes till we got off, and people were crying, but it was almost like it was eating popcorn or something. It was entertainment. It was all just some new emotional thrill to live vicariously through the dead hero. I mean, how about you actually don't put them in fraudulent wars? How about you, for opium or for weapons sales or no-bid contracts, how about you actually give them treatment? How about you don't have them use DU? So, but see, they don't want that actual casualty number where they die right there. They'd rather you die in 15, 20 years after decades of torturous pain and deformed children. It's creeping death. It's slow-motion genocide. Dr. Rokke, you were talking about going to local veterans groups and saying, okay, help our dead and dying soldiers. And they said, take a flying leap into the ocean, pal. We just want some cash off well-meaning, gullible citizens. Break it down.
Well, let's talk about reality casualty. Now, you have these reports, and you've had them, you've updated, and you can post it. Here is the real casualties as of October of this year. 107,256 individuals have infectious and parasitic diseases. 9,367 individuals with malignant cancer, 44,290 with benign cancers, 220,268 individuals with diseases of the endocrine, nutritional, metabolic system, 24,894 cases of leukemia, 367,749 with PTSD, 310,360 individuals with serious neurological problems, 147,267 individuals with cardiac problems, 182,783 individuals with serious respiratory problems, 253,450 450 individuals with digestive problems. 102,661 with serious genitourinary. 147,617 individuals with serious rashes. 396,552 of us with serious musculoskeletal problems. 359,998 of us with serious ill-defined conditions, and 200,846 with serious poisonings. That is the reality of casualties just from OIF and OEF. Now, the numbers for Desert Storm mirror, the percentages mirrored exactly the same. That is the real casualty numbers from the nonsense over no threat to the United States, but the real casualties, and the guys cannot get prompt and optimal medical care. And the problem is there really is no real good medical care to resolve these serious confirmed medical problems. That's the reality is, and nobody wants to discuss it. There's not a mention on the mainstream media. There's not a mention in the newspaper or magazine about the real numbers of casualties, delayed and medical care, or the fact that there is no effective medical care to treat these people.
Well, doctor, and again, this is one of the biggest cover-ups obviously ever, and you've been tireless exposing it. And how many surgeries have you had yourself to stay alive because of this?
Well, I was on active duty as the director of the Depleted Uranium Project doing the research for the Army with DU. I had 20 kidney surgeries. As the time I was director, they're saying, how are you doing the research and serving as director when you're so sick you're in and out of the hospital and surgery after surgery? When we were out in the Nevada test site blowing the stuff up to confirm the procedures and other things to write the Army regulations, I was literally passing blood. And I was having respiratory problems. And the rest of our team was. And everybody's going, my God, the Department of Energy scientists are out there going, what's wrong with you guys? You guys should be in the hospital, in an intensive care unit, and you're in the field doing research and blowing this shit up? And I go, that's right, because we have to figure out how do you protect and clean it all up. And we learned you can't do it, and you can't use it.
So the chicken neck bankers, the little Ivy League punks, send the troops off with a weapon that they know is a death sentence, and then they sell their new wars and their tyranny as if the troops want it. Oh, don't end the wars. The troops want to keep them going, and it's all pure bull, and they call Ron Paul insane for not wanting new wars.
What they happen, they don't provide the information to the troops. And, I mean, you have to understand, Christmas, okay? You know, I've been dealing with Christmas, a horrific thing now since 1967. Okay, because I went on active duty in December of 1967, and I was down at Lackland Air Force Base when we had the meningitis outbreak in '67, in December of '67, and I saw people die from meningitis. But all this happened and everything else. And so what happens, I had 5 calls over Christmas, from Christmas Eve through Christmas, 5 calls for screams for help. Because over the holidays, all of the problems are intensified. Now, I can't solve these problems. All I can do is provide information. I can call the VA, call the Department of Defense. I can talk to my friends in Washington and say, take care of them, take care of them, take care of them. But when they refuse to do so, and they know they're required to do so because they don't care, because they can't admit what we have done to the American sons and daughters of warriors we sent.
That's right. I remember the congressional hearings in the mid-'90s where it would show the Marine captain, you know, photos before totally healthy and the DU killing him and the guy in a wheelchair and then dying a few months later. And it's not patriotic, according to the bankers, to actually care about the troops. Now, before we went to break, I want you to talk about this. Talk about the groups you've gone to try to help dead and dying troops and get them to the hospital and stuff, and what the so-called veterans groups tell you.
They don't even want to hear it. I mean, the American Legion and VFW won't post the information. They won't post the casualty data. They won't post the medical directives. They won't post the mandatory post-deployment physical assessment form that is supposed to be filled out by every troop when they're deployed and come back. And sometimes they do it, and most of the time they're not, and we know they're disappearing in the official files. They won't help us. I can't even get the local American Legion to transport guys with no legs 30 miles.
No, they just, most of them want to go get drunk and watch UFC and talk about how they love killing Arabs all day. And then you're like, hey, let's help guys with no legs. And they're like, eh. But I guarantee you their cars have got American flag and veteran stickers all over them.
Well, they always do, you know, and it never ends. You know, so all these veterans organizations, all you have to do, go to any of these organizations that are demanding money. Okay, is the medical directive up there mandating medical care for DU? Is the Army pamphlet up there confirming all of the physiological effects and the medical care required for all the burn pit exposures? Is the stuff up there on immunizations? Is the stuff up there that confirms all the health effects?
Doc, the New York Post this year, when Congress was trying to get medical care for people with asbestos poisoning, that all the major scientists said, yeah, we CAT scan their lungs. The police, the military, the firefighters, they've all got it. The New York Post and others called the veterans of 9/11 ambulance chasers. And I've met these guys where before they go give a speech, then a lot of them die. Guys I've met in New York, cops and people are coughing blood up and are on respirators, mobile mask of oxygen. And then the news calls them scum because they're dying. I mean, this is evil.
You know, the guys, this brings it home, and you're bringing it home to where I'm almost ready to cry. Back in the 90s, the United States Army directed me to put together a chemical biological counterterrorism program for the New York Police and Fire Department Emergency Services Unit. The Emergency Police and Fire Department Service Unit that went into the World Trade Center were my friends. They were my students. We had directed them to do what we call reverse triage. In other words, move those that are mobile out first out of that building and leave the others to come back. And those people died. And my friends died. My police and fire that I trained died in that building trying to do the rescues. My best friend, I mean, again, another really good friend of J.C. Ventura is Willie Rodriguez. I know you know Willie.
Sure.
I mean, Willie is, God bless. I mean, he's a real American hero. He was the last man out of there alive. You know, and him and I, you know, we talk all the time and we cry and the tears. And then we saw in the paper the other day, they're giving a take it or leave it to the heroes, the police and the fire of 911, the people in the building are all sick and dying.
10 years later, they can't even get medical treatment, and then the New York Post and others call them ambulance chasers when they're on record dying.
Yeah, it's no question, because when that happened that day, I mean, we called up there immediately up to them. I called, I said, you need to do this, this, and this. This is what we told you. This is the requirements. This is medical care needs to be done. This is the decon that needs to be done. You got the requirements, so we gave it to, called up to the New York Police and Fire, and they ignored it. We called the Department of Defense. They ignored it. You know, Mikey Kilpatrick and McDermott at the VA, they all told.
And it turned out the head of the EPA had been told, tell people the air is safe to breathe. They knew it was deadly.
Well, we had a conference at the EPA headquarters in Cincinnati, Ohio, a few years afterwards, and all this came out. They had me in there as a keynote speaker.
Stay there. I want to hear about this in one more segment. Then our big special report's coming up. Again, police, military, the criminals running this country hate America, hate our freedom. And yes, they're on record creating Al-Qaeda. The bad guys are in control. They've hijacked the nation. And they... Here's that quote from Cicero back during the takeover of Julius Caesar. A nation can survive its fools and even the ambitious, but it cannot survive treason from within. An enemy at the gates is less formidable, for he is known and carries his banner openly. But the traitor moves amongst those within the gate freely. His sly whispers rustling through the alleys, heard in the very halls of government itself. For the traitor appears not as a traitor. He speaks in accents familiar to his victims, and he wears their face and their arguments. He appeals to the baseness that lies deep in the hearts of all men. He rots the soul of a nation. He works secretly and unknown in the night to undermine the pillars of the city. He infects the body politic so that it can no longer resist. A murderer is less to fear. The traitor is the plague. That's Marcus Tullius Cicero, ancient Roman lawyer, writer, scholar, orator, statesman, philosopher. Going back to Doug Rokke in the few minutes we have left, Doc, that's the point you were making earlier, but you were getting into being the keynote speaker up there as the cover-up of the deadly dust came out. Please continue.
What had happened, there was a conference called at the EPA Center, looking at health and environmental effects and all this stuff, at Cincinnati, Ohio. I mean, we went through so many closed doors and locked doors. We get into the conference room, and there was a total discussion about all the known, all the documented evidence from the EPA that they had found immediately about the horrible health and environmental consequences of both all of the explosives and DU and everything used at the World Trade Center on 9/11, and the same thing at the Pentagon, and how they had known from immediately what the problems were. Again, we called them, and they knew already, and that the EPA chief, Christine, I remember her last name, was ordered to lie, cheat, and steal to cover it all up. I mean, it wasn't box cutters that caused all the health and environmental effects up there. It was explosives. There's no two ways about it. The same explosives we use all over the military operations, and the same effects on everybody. So when you look at what happened with the explosions, World Trade Center before the aircraft hit, it was all set up, and it continued on. And the same thing at the Pentagon. There was absolutely, I mean, when you look at the Pentagon Building Performance Report, and you really study it and look at the photos and look at the video, and then read their statements, you realize none of it happened. And so what we have is a horrible health and environmental effects, and the people in both the World Trade Center and the Pentagon to this day, my friends, can't get medical care. They can't get medical care. And what was in the newspaper the other day, they were told, you take it or leave it. You got your last option. Now it's been 10 years. That's how we treat those. And the way we treat our military personnel with 1 million casualties is horrific. And the flag wavers are out there. You know, most people, they want a six-pack of beer and watch a ball game. That for them is what it is, because they have to take action. They have to do something. They have to help somebody. They have to make a commitment that will disrupt their way of life and maybe affect their income and affect their health. But, you know, some of us have to do what's right. It's sort of like Cy Hirsch. We did a book book years ago dealing with all the health and environmental effects of Operation Desert, or what's known as Gulf War illness. And the title of the book, the Cy came up with, Against All Enemies. Many of us took an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, both foreign and domestic.
Well, all these scum for power and money that will do anything and will sell out their own mother for a stick of bubble gum, they are destroying our society. And all these people that are demonizing Ron Paul and lying about him, all these people trying to keep folks in the dark, all these people trying to prop up this evil. When this is all defeated, I'm going to do my best, if I'm still around, to make sure they're brought to justice.
God bless you. Thank you very much, Alex Jones.
Well, we're going to bring them to justice. Those that use the DU, those that authorized it, those that...
Orange.
Monsanto. The people that have set the system up, they are not going to get away with it. They're going to be tried by juries, and they're going to be punished. Dr. Doug Rokke, thank you so much.